Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our Week 7 waiver wire pickups.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So like we normally do, we're going to be talking about 5 players that we're telling you to go add right away and how much FAAB would be willing to spend. So let's talk about quarterback Caleb Williams. In sleeper leagues, he's currently rostered around 67%. ESPN leagues, he's around 50%. And who knows about the other ones? That's just the ones we talk about. So when it comes to Caleb Williams, he had his best game ever as far as his young career. 23 for 29, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Also had 4 carries for 56 yards. Bye week next week. So this could go under the radar. If you have a bench spot, you could be able to get him. But going forward, he's got at Washington, at Arizona, New England, Green Bay, Minnesota, at Detroit, at San Fran, Detroit, or at Minnesota, Detroit, and Seattle. So a lot of decent matchups coming up here, Joe. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been hot the last couple of games, but he's also just been exploiting some really bad defenses. So I don't know if I'd go crazy for him. You know, you mentioned they're on a bye, so you can't stream them for this upcoming week. You know, Washington was the defense you could target and have good weeks, but they've even tightened things up a little bit. Arizona is the one matchup, but then New England, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. Those are some also tough matchups. I do think he is worth a pickup because he does look like he's figured things out, and Chicago's got a lot of weapons, even though they're not even really fully using them. I mean, Dunze didn't have a very good game, neither did DJ Moore, but Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet found the end zone 2 times, so that's a plus sign. The thing with the Williams, I just think off of this game against the Jaguars, you're going to have to spend a boatload, and I just don't know if I'd be willing to do that just because I think he's just had a couple of big matchups. So I think in order to get him, you're probably going to have to, probably go 10 to 15% if people are, quarterback needy and looking to pick somebody up. And Caleb Williams has flashed last 2 weeks, but I don't know if I'd personally do that.
I think that's a good point. Sometimes you have to think more about the FAAB with how much you're going to spend compared to how the league is going to spend, right? Because you could think about so much about how much you're going to spend, which I would say 5%. I wouldn't want to spend a lot more than that, like you mentioned. But I mean, if the league is going to spend 10 to 15, you really have to ask yourself, do you really want the player? At the end of the day, you might honestly, you might be a frugal person when it comes to bidding for waivers, and if so, you might not be getting anybody. So you have to really choose, who is it you're going to go after. So I'm kind of with you based on what happened. Now, it is the bye week coming up, so he may fall under the radar a little bit, but more than likely, he probably is going to get a lot of FAAB if he's still out there.
Yeah, and I think people, maybe they don't need him next week, but like maybe their own quarterback has like a week 9 bye, and they're kind of planning for the future. This is the time to kind of look ahead and try to plan for that future. So I do think, probably going to at least go for 10% in your leagues.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So the next player we're going to be talking about is a guy who played on Thursday night last week, which is running back Isaac Guerendo of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we did hear that Jordan Mason had an AC sprain, I believe it is, in his shoulder. So, that could typically be a 2 to 4 week injury, depending on how severe it is. So, his game status is kind of up in the air next week. He did have, this is Guerendo now, 10 carries, 99 yards. So he did look pretty good in more action that he was given once Jordan Mason left the game. So what are your thoughts on Guerendo? Joe, Christian McCaffrey could be looming in the background, could be coming back. You're saying maybe, what are they saying, like week 12 maybe? Week 9 is the bye. So what are your thoughts on Guerendo here?
Yeah, I think at the earliest for McCaffrey would be week 10. They're saying November. I doubt that he's going to be back before the week 9 bye. So week 10 is probably when McCaffrey's back. But as far as Guerendo goes, you mentioned the 10 for 99, but a lot of that came on a 76-yard run at the end of the game. He chose to slide down instead of getting the touchdown, which Juszczyk later punched it in on Thursday night. But it just didn't matter if whoever is going to be starting for the San Francisco 49ers, they're going to probably do well. The matchup isn't the best against the Kansas City Chiefs, though. They've been, a tough team to run on. Chris Jones have been dominant, but I think if anybody can get it done, it'll probably be the San Francisco 49ers. So I do think he's worth a pickup. Just with the fact that Mason could return McCaffrey, I don't think I'd go a ton. I'd probably go somewhere, 5 to 7% maybe. But I think it's mostly if you got like Jordan Mason and you need a direct replacement, there's probably not much out there. So you're probably, maybe you go a little bit more aggressive if you're the Mason owner.
I think I have similar thoughts to you. I probably would say about 5%. But sometimes, this does bite me because, I looked at Darius Slayton last week. We didn't talk about him. And I was like, Malik Neighbors is going to come back. So when Malik Neighbors comes back, then you're not going to want Slayton. Well, Malik Neighbors didn't come back, and Slayton, I believe, he did okay. So, in my mind, I'm like, okay, Jordan Mason's going to be back. Like, why do I want a week fill-in? Why do I want to spend a ton? But you never know. I mean, depending on how long Mason's out, this could trickle down. So I usually don't go for these type of players. If I'm going to spend a lot of FAAB on somebody, I want to make sure it's going to, be worth my while and they're going to last and have a decent amount of usage. So that's my thing I don't know about with him. So I'd say about 5% is about how much I'd like to spend.
Yeah, especially just not like if it's not a multiple week injury and Mason's back on week 8. I mean, Dallas is an absolute dream matchup for running backs right now, and I just don't know if Guerendo is going to be able to get that opportunity or not.
So in week 6, Joe, we had a few rookie quarterbacks debut that we weren't anticipating due to either some injuries or some benchings, but they've got some new favorite targets. Let's talk about the New England Patriots and DeMario Douglas. Looks like Drake May has a new nice target here. He had 9 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on DeMario Douglas?
Yeah, I think he's a good ad. I mean, this is back-to-back games with 9 targets. The prior game was with Jacoby Brissett, but I've actually got him rostered in, in another league. I do think he's worth rostering, and he's a lot more interesting, honestly, with Drake May at quarterback. We saw the deeper plays. I mean, with Jacoby Brissett against the Dolphins, his average reception was 9.8, and then it went all the way to 15.3 with Drake May already playing, and not to mention, just saw Caleb Williams take advantage of it in London. Well, guess what? Jags are in London again, and New England Patriots are going to be there. They're the 32nd ranked defense against the pass, so I think you can dial up Pop Douglas this upcoming week.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what you think about this because I do think that he's a player on the rise. And we saw, even the pass from Drake May to Kayshon Boutte, right? You see that deep ball element that was somewhat missing with Jacoby Brissett there. So I agree with you. I think about 5% sounds good, but like, how do you quantify like how good Douglas is going to be? Like, is Douglas going to be like a flex play from here on out? Like, is this guy just going to be this viable starter, for fantasy leagues?
Yeah, I think he's possibly going to be a flex play. Like, I don't think he's going to exceed that. Like, I think probably this type of game is probably like what he does at his possible ceiling, maybe. But maybe against the Jags, he's able to do it. I just feel like he's like the underneath guy. They don't do a whole lot of deeper passes to him, like a Boutte or even a Jalen Polk. I think those are more of their deep targets, but he definitely has a role, with those crossers over the middle.
Next rookie wide receiver we're going to be talking about, which is a career best for this man, and which is wide receiver Bub Means of the New Orleans Saints. Had 8 targets, 5 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown. It did help that Chris Olave did leave the game due to concussion, more than likely. Will he be back? Will he not be back? We don't know. But Bub Means definitely looked like a favorite for Spencer Rattler. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on Bub Means?
Yeah, honestly, he was pretty impressive. Unfortunately, Olave goes down early in the game, but you mentioned it. I mean, Spencer Rattler was definitely looking his way, and the thing of it is, Olave it's probably going to be tough for him. They're playing Thursday night against the Broncos. It's probably going to be a tough turnaround for him to clear concussion protocol. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Surtain also left the game with a concussion. Probably going to be hard for him to make it through the concussion protocols prior to Thursday. So Bub Means I know most people who see Broncos defense think the Surtain effect is going to happen, but Surtain's probably going to miss. So I do think Bub Means is a potential sneaky play. Um, I wouldn't be going crazy for him. I mean, probably anywhere from 0 to 3%, but I do think he's worth an ad, especially you're looking for wide receiver to add, or maybe you are the Chris Olave owner even.
I feel the same way you do. I think that's right about the amount that I would be willing to spend. I just think that, I mean, the Saints do lack, I think, receiving options. You really just have
Yeah.
Sheik and Olave hasn't really lived up to the billing. So I think that Means could be pretty good. And if they have a connection, Rattler and him do, I'd be interested in him, but I don't think I want to spend that much for him. So I think you're right about 0 to 3% sounds about good. But I would prioritize, which obviously you would know if based on how much money we'd be willing to spend. I'd rather have DeMario Douglas over Bub Means.
Yeah. Yeah. In a pinch, I mean, I know maybe you got bye week problems, or maybe DeMario Douglas is already owned. Like, I already have him in some leagues. I mean, I do think Means could be worth a speculative ad, but it also could just be, for this upcoming game on Thursday night, a tight end game as well for the Saints. You saw Monroe and kind of Jawan Johnson getting involved. And this was the first start for Spencer Rattler. So be interesting to see how he does this upcoming Thursday.
The last player we're going to be talking about is wide receiver Romeo Doubs of the Green Bay Packers. Joe, we know the squeaky wheel sometimes gets the grease, and boy, did it with Romeo Doubs. Obviously was suspended a game due to him missing practices, and he just wants to be more part of the offense. Well, Romeo, you got your wish. Romeo out Romeo, right? 4 targets, 3 catches, 49 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe, what are your thoughts? He's going up against the Houston Texans next week. I think the tough part is with Doubs is in sleeper leagues, he's 51% rostered. Don't know off the top of my head with ESPN. Do you think you should go after Doubs? Will Doubs be a Packer? Will Doubs get traded? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, I don't know if Doubs is going to get traded, but for the record, ESPN, he's 29.6% rostered.
Okay, I thought it was much lower.
Lower than sleeper. I got to say, I don't know how excited I am to pick up Romeo Doubs after this big game. I mean, he only had 4 targets. He had 3 catches. 2 of his 3 catches just happened to be touchdowns. Like, if he doesn't get the touchdowns, you're going to be, greatly disappointed, kind of like his previous games. This was the first game he's had a touchdown, and let alone multiple touchdowns. Jaden Reed got a little dinged up in this game. I don't know how much of that played a role in him having these 2 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, the tough thing is with this Packer receiving unit is I don't know. You're going to have to try to guess right. And I don't know if you're going to be able to pick which one of them is going to have that game. Like we saw Dontavian Wicks have a game. Now he's greatly disappointed. Everyone rushed to the waiver wire for that guy. Christian Watson got a touchdown. Jaden Reed's been the steady Eddie of the offense. Even Tucker Kraft had a bad game after, once again, he exploded and everyone rushed to the waiver wire. So if you want to add him, I think that's fine. I'm not going crazy. Again, I'm probably going 0 to 3%, but I'm not that excited to go out and pick up Doubs.
Jaden Reed is the only must start, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Within the receiving core. I don't think there's anybody else. You got to play the other ones based on matchup, and it can be real.
If you want the ultimate boomer bust option, you play Christian Watson, because if he gets one of those deep touchdowns, you're going to be happy.
Sure, absolutely. But Reed is the chest.
Oh yeah. Like I said, he's the steady Eddie guy.
Yeah. So I mean,
he's the main guy that they draw up plays for. These other guys, they aren't like drawing plays to get them the ball like they do Jaden Reed.
See, I'm not. I see. I don't know if I agree with you. I think the Doubs could get traded still. I don't think it's out of the question just because he had this game, which I think I'd be more interested in if he was traded. But
if he was traded, I'd be much more interested. I just don't see why the Packers would do that.
I'd say 2 to 5% for me, but I would go DeMario Douglas 1, Doubs 2, Means 3 as far as the receivers go.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Just because I don't know how many weeks you get out of Bub Means. Like, if you need a streamer, I'd put Means ahead of Doubs. But as far as like a long-term play, I would definitely put Doubs ahead of Means there. All right, wait up, Steve. We got one extra player here to talk about, and that's going to be running back Sean Tucker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a pretty big game against the Saints here. 14 carries, 136 yards, touchdown. He also added 3 catches for 56 yards and another touchdown. 34.2 points in PPR scoring. He's not a heavily rostered guy. Currently sitting at 1% on ESPN. Are you potentially adding Sean Tucker?
I wonder who the 1% is, because in Sleeper he's 0%. So there's got to be somebody who's a big Syracuse fan or something that they're like, I'm just a believer in Sean
It's
Tucker.
interesting because like ESPN's not heavy in Dynasty or anything, so I'd actually be surprised if he's rostered in a redraft league.
I know, it's wild because in Sleeper he's 0, and that includes Dynasty League. So people are like out on Sean Tucker. Yeah, I mean, I didn't include him in the top 5 because I think it's always great game script dependent. If you saw near the end, the game kind of the Saints kind of got blown away towards the end there, and Tampa Bay just hit their stride, and they just kind of gave the ball a ton to Sean Tucker. So to me, Rachaad White was out of this game. Rachaad White, I think, will come back sooner rather than later. You got Bucky Irving still. So this to me is fool's gold. I would definitely restrain myself from bidding on Sean Tucker at all.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. The one receiving touchdown he had, he scored that before things got out of hand. He did look pretty good, but like you said, I'm probably staying away from him unless you have like you're in a deep league, have a deep bench. That's probably where the 1% roster is coming from. He could be worth a speculative ad, but I wouldn't chase the points here. Like you said, Rachaad White, once these get back, this potentially becomes like a 3-headed monster backfield, and probably just looking to avoid it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that does it for this episode. We talked about a few players that are a priority for us that we're going to be picking up here in the next waiver wire period. Hopefully you found this episode helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.